In 2nd Chronicles 35, we have two stories. The first story is about how Josiah keeps the Passover. Josiah was the king who started when he was 8 years old. When he's 16 years old and it's no longer apparently a regency, he sets his heart to seek the Lord in chapter 34. He's the one who destroys the altars and burns the priest's bones on the altars in chapter 34. And he's very zealous for the Lord. And then you get that moment when they recover the law, which has been lost. It's buried away somewhere in the temple. And what happens is he tears his clothes when he reads it because he realizes all the things he's not doing. And so in contrast to that is chapter 35 in the Passover, where he does exactly as the Lord wants them to do. And it is an extraordinary moment. Josiah kept a Passover to the Lord in Jerusalem, and they slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the first month. Right on schedule, 14th day, first month. That's how it happens in Exodus. That's how it's set up. So they're following exactly. He appointed the priests to their offices and encouraged them in the service of the house of the Lord. He appointed. The priests have their things that they have to do, and he's going to tell them to do it. As we go through, you'll see he tells them to do it according to everything that is set up. And so he does that, and he encourages them. I like what Matthew Henry says there. He speaks comfortably to them. And he said to the Levites who taught all Israel and who were holy to the Lord. Now this is very interesting what he says in verse 3. You might just read it and think, yeah, that's right, without stopping to think, wait, what's going on here? Listen to what he says. He says, put the holy ark in the house that Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, built. Put the ark in the house, in the temple. What's it doing not there? What are they doing with the ark that he has to tell them to put it back? Apparently, they're parading it around. What does he say next? You need not carry it on your shoulders, right? And so they have taken it upon themselves, apparently, in the neglect of everything, the neglect of how things are supposed to be. They've said, look, we have this beautiful ark. Let's parade it around. Let's have people see it. Let's take it to them. I think that's one of the themes there. They're taking it to them instead of the people coming as God had appointed and said. And so he ends by saying, now serve, in verse 3, now serve the Lord your God and his people Israel, right? There's an implication there. What you're doing is not. It's the opposite of serving the Lord your God and his people Israel. It's not doing any service to God. God hasn't required it. It's not doing any service to them. God would have required you to do it for their benefit. If it was for their benefit, he would have required that of you, and he's not. So he goes on exhorting them, prepare yourselves according to your father's houses, by your divisions, as prescribed in the writing of David, king of Israel, who set up and organized the expanded worship with choirs and psalms and singing, and told them where to go, and established then as the house of their fathers were, which division would serve in what, and all that they would do, as prescribed in the writing of David, king of Israel, and the document of Solomon his son. Stand in the holy place, according to the groupings of the fathers' houses, and your brothers the lay people, and according to the divisions of the Levites by father's household. You see there, you put the ark back where it belongs, and you get yourselves where you belong, right? Instead of coming up with things to do and taking the ark where it isn't supposed to go. And slaughter the Passover lamb, and consecrate yourselves, and prepare for your brothers to do according to the word of the Lord by Moses, right? Now you go all the way back to Moses and the institution. You see that in the first verse, the allusion to it in the 14th day, and the institution of the time by Moses, and you end with Moses, and in the middle you have this verse 3 and 4, David, Solomon, Solomon, David, type of thing, bringing his exhortation all together. It's thought through. It appeals to what has been done in the past, to how God established and set things. They're trying to benefit the people by giving them this visual experience of the ark. And he's saying, put the ark back. They don't need to see it. You guys can go in the holy place, not the Holy of Holies where the ark is. But that is your place. Take your place. Do your thing, and this will benefit your brothers, the rest of Israel. Then Josiah, in verse 7, contributed to the lay people a Passover offering for all who were present, lambs and young goats from the flock to the number of 30,000. That's a lot of lambs that he contributed, and 3,000 bulls. He contributes generously, right? He wants to see them do this. He said, let's do this according to the word of the Lord. And then he says, let me help you with this, with his own generosity. These were from the king's possessions, and his officials contributed too. They contributed willingly to the people, to the priests and the Levites. Hilkiah, Zechariah, and Jehiel, the chief officers of the house of God, gave to the priests for the Passover offerings 2,600 Passover lambs and 300 bulls. Now, in proportion, it's disproportionate. He gives generously. And I think in that he's a picture of Christ, right? Christ gives disproportionately. We give, we contribute our little contributions. They are recorded, they are valued, they're good. Not that we contribute to our justification, but we contribute to the work of the Lord in our little way, just as Jesus Christ disproportionately, contributes generously. And in that, Josiah is a picture, I think, of Christ. Coniah also, verse 9, and Shemaiah and Nethanel, his brothers, and Hashabiah and Jael and Jozabad, the chief of the Levites, gave to the Levites for the Passover offering 5,000 lambs and young goats and 500 bulls. So they give in their thousands, right? But Josiah gives in his 10,000s. And I see two lessons there. One, that he is a picture of Christ. But another one is that you can encourage, you might have gifts that others don't have, and so you give them disproportionate to what they contribute in that area. But this is what helps the work of the Lord carry on, right? One can teach, and he might teach disproportionately because others can't. One may be able to play the piano, and that person, she does it all the time because others can't, right? Contribute as you can and as God has given you ability. Be generous. Be generous. What will the outcome be of this generosity? Hold that question in your mind. Verse 10. When the service had been prepared for, the priests stood in their place, and the Levites in their divisions according to the king's command. And they slaughtered the Passover lamb, and the priests threw the blood that they received from them, while the Levites flayed the sacrifices. Right? There's sprinkling to go on. There's collecting of blood. That's part of the Passover. They're killing I think it works out to close to 38,000 lambs. And so if you think about it, that's a lot of little lambs to be handling in the temple, coming in, being killed. I got a guy who was a butcher in my church. He told me, I think I could do 3,000 to 4,000 lambs a day. 3,000 to 4,000, 3,000, maybe he can do 2,000, but that's a lot of people just slaughtering, right? Then handling the blood and passing it on to the Levites who are not of the Aaronic priestly family, so that they can flay the sacrifices. Verse 12, and they set aside the burnt offerings that they might distribute them according to the groupings of the fathers' houses of the lay people, right? The tribes bring their certain amount of whole burnt offerings that they offer up to the Lord, as it is written in the book of Moses. And so they did with the bulls. And they roasted the Passover lamb, right? They don't just kill the lamb. They don't just take the blood. They don't just flay and gut the lamb. They roast it because everybody's going to eat. And so he's providing for the whole country. With fire, roasted the lamb with fire according to the rule. And they boiled the holy offerings in pots and cauldrons and pans and carried them quickly to the lay people. Didn't look up what that means. I'm not sure why they're boiling stuff, but it's a lot of work. It's a complex operation. And afterward, they prepared for themselves and for the priests, because the priests, the sons of Aaron, were offering the burnt offerings and the fat parts until night. There's a part of the altar just occupied in that, never mind the cooking, never mind the roasting and all that, just occupied in that. The Levites prepared themselves and for themselves and for the priests, the sons of Aaron, so that everybody would have lamb to eat at midnight. The singers, the sons of Asaph, were in their place according to the command of David, and Asaph and Heman and Jeduthun, the king's seer. So they're singing all day long. There are people in there, the choirs coming and going, alternating, singing. And the gatekeepers were at each gate. Why do you have gatekeepers? Well, because you have to control. You have to crowd control these people coming through with their lambs, for their blood, for their roasted lamb, for the ritual with the whole burnt offering, for all the things that they do, the common people filing through, the heads of the tribes and all that, the lambs coming in, the other animals coming in, the disposing of all the things that were not burned, and so on and so forth, the wood for the fire, the water. What a bloodbath. Just keeping all that organized. The gatekeepers. They did not need to depart from their service, it says, for their brothers, the Levites, prepared for them. When they did, right? They're not out parading the ark around, 2 people carrying it on their shoulders, 4 people carrying it on their shoulders. No, it's involving everybody. They have this huge operation. What are they doing? What God told them to do. What God told them to do. That is what they're doing. And it is a complex, it is enough for them to do. It's a huge complex operation, and they do it well because they've all been appointed to do their different parts. They're just following what was written down by David and Solomon and Moses, speaking for the Lord's commands to his people. Verse 16. So all the service of the Lord was prepared that day to keep the Passover and to offer burnt offerings on the altar of the Lord according to the command of King Josiah. And the people of Israel who were present kept the Passover at that time and the feast of unleavened bread 7 days. Now here's the interesting thing about this passage. Verse 18. No Passover like it had been kept in Israel since the days of Samuel the prophet. What? Not since David, not since Hezekiah, who had a great Passover, not since Solomon, none like it since Samuel, since all the way back before there was a monarchy. Interesting connection at the beginning and end of this story with Samuel. Why? Because when is the last time we heard in the Bible that the ark was being paraded around as it should not have been, right? In the days of Samuel, what is it? The Battle of Aphek, down with the Philistines. They took the ark out, and what resulted in that? They lost the ark. And there was destruction and woe and doom and dismay. It's like not till the times of Josiah do they get it right and put it back. It's been back. They've had Passovers, but there's kind of this. I think what Ezra is saying. There's this big gap of time, and there's a symbolic return. You can, even after all this time, even after all this unfaithfulness, at the decline of the monarchy, in the end, right? There's one more chapter to this book, and there's no more monarchy, and it's all over. At the end of all this stuff, there was a faithful king that rose up, and he said, we need to do what the Lord says. We haven't been doing it. He tore his clothes. We haven't even had the Bible. The high priest hasn't read the Bible. They find out what it says. They do it according to the book, according to what it says. They don't say this is too hard. We've never done this before. They just do it. And they have a Passover like they have not had since when they started goofing around with the ark and straying from what God said to do with that, right? It's not like there aren't other occasions, but it's a symbolic association, a part of the story. None of the kings of Israel, in case we have any doubt, verse 18 tells us, none of the kings of Israel had kept such a Passover as was kept by Josiah. The priests and the Levites and all Judah and Israel who were present, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They had it. These people had it. Those who said, let's do it even though we haven't done it. It's been a long time. Nobody knows what this is like. But people haven't even been reading the Bible because nobody has had it. Let's just do it. Let's do what God says. And so in the 18th year of the reign of King Josiah, this Passover was kept, one that set the record, right? Broke the Guinness Book of World Records for Passovers in Israel since the time of Samuel. Astonishing. And so I think the lesson is, you should do what God says. There's so many distractions. You can parade the ark around. Oh, it's aesthetic. Nobody ever sees the great, gold work, the precious, just the details of the wings of the cherubim. Nobody sees that ever. We need to parade it around. We need to have a festival. Don't do that. Do what God says. Put it away. It seems counterintuitive. Just stand in your place. Kill lambs all day, if that's what God wants you to do. And you will see how it goes beyond anything that you would have expected.